Hello and welcome to Eurogamer.net podcast 107. If James didn't edit that properly and you're wondering what the hell I was doing my game face, bringing on my game face. So hello, I'm Tom Bramwell and I'm joined by Wesley Inpool.
Hello.
And Tom Phillips.
Hello there.
Tom Phillips is fresh from holiday.
I am. I caught the sun a little bit.
Yeah.
You might have noticed.
Can you give it back? It's quite cold.
Didn't
Well,
notice.
Where did you go?
I went to Tenby, which is in South Wales, but it's very nice, even though it is in Wales. My girlfriend's sister got married, and then we spent a week there, and it was just the most perfectly timed holiday in the world. The weather was amazing.
Did you play any games?
I played some Draw Something on my phone whenever I had signal. Signal in Wales isn't the best. But no, apart from that, I was on a game vacation as well.
Wow. So, girlfriend's sister got married. Does that mean that...
That she got married. That's what it means. Yeah.
Good. I'll let you can get away with that one. That was quite good. Right. Well, funny you should mention Draw Something, Tom. It's very funny because we are going to be talking about that a little bit.
Oh, cool.
Specifically, I wanted to touch on the amusing furore around the CEO of OMG Pop, the company that makes Draw Something, and his activities on Twitter over the last few days.
He popped.
OMG. He did pop, and there were some OMGs. So yeah, like I think everyone knows what's happened with this anyway. But that company was bought by Zynga for at $180 million with potential to earn out another $30 million.
Up to 210, I think.
Yes, up to $210 million. This is off the back of Draw Something, which is a phenomenon for iPhone and iPad and so on, which has been downloaded like 35 million times in 7 weeks or something, which just makes you feel really bad for games like Asura's Wrath, which will never even be looked at 35 times. But which are obviously potentially a lot better. So anyway, Draw Something very popular, and Buyout very successful, etc. Blah blah blah. Zynga, and unfortunately, not everybody who was part of the OMG Pop crowd was happy with this arrangement. There was a chap, his name's Shay Pierce, who wrote a column for Gama Sutra last week, and apparently he's the only person in the OMG Pop team who didn't take the Zynga dollar.
Well, he did,
but
he was the only one who refused to sign on with the new new way. So he took his share,
but he didn't then.
He took his share, and
I
he
didn't realise that.
Yeah, I don't think that he got quite as much money as some of the others. But he still saw a decent amount of money into his bank account.
Well, that puts my perspective on the whole thing. You know, it changed it completely. I thought that he was this moral guy who saw the money and then walked away from it. But
no,
he got a slice.
His beef, as I'm sure Tom can explain further, was mainly with Zynga.
Yeah,
Zynga.
I think. Well, we've been debating this over the last few days, actually, as we've started to actually say the word out loud. I think it's meant to be pronounced Zinger, as in like Zinger
Tower Burger.
Exactly.
Wow.
But we've always pronounced it because we're very British as Zinger, and so. But when you hear Americans say it, they say Zinger, in the same way they say Twitter, which always drives me insane.
And it's Oh My God Pop or OMG Pop.
I don't really care. It's Zynga New York at this point, isn't it? Anyway, so this guy Shay Pierce, the guy who left Gama Sutra, or Game Sutra as I've written it in my notes, he wrote this. He wrote this column for them in which he said that Zynga was quote he said quote, an evil company is trying to get rich quick and has no regard for the harm they're doing along the way. It's not making things of value. It's chasing a gold rush. And he continued. An evil game company isn't really interested in making games. It's too busy playing a game with the stock market usually. It views players as weak-minded cash cows, and it views its developers as expendable, replaceable tools to create the machines that milk those cows. Strong stuff. Obviously, this was...
talking about KFC.
This was viewed... well, no, that would be chickens, wouldn't it? Anyway, this was in theory. This was viewed very poorly by CEO of OMG Pop, Dan Porter, who tweeted and said, "The one OMG Pop employee who turned down joining Zynga was the weakest one on the whole team. Selfish people make bad games. Good riddance." And in case that didn't really get the point across and offend people enough, he then followed up with, "What's so interesting about success is the number of failures who tried to ride on your back. Shay Pierce is just one of many. ...
Gazinga.
Yeah, Gazinga. Yeah, Zynga OMG Pop.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, he's since clarified his comments slightly, which I found even more amusing. He said he told us, in fact, he said he got very emotional about the comments that Shay Pearce had made, and obviously you can sort of understand that. So what you can understand perhaps less is his additional clarification, which just made him sound like a bit of a twat again, in which he said, because what happens is that the people who don't blog and who stick with the team and who give their sweat and tears on the game aren't the ones who are in the press. They are the ones I am loyal to. They are the ones I want to celebrate. When a guy who doesn't work on Draw Something and who works on his own stuff takes the press away from the people who do their jobs and give everything, it makes me upset.
It's a good apology there.
It is. It's the classic no apology.
Yeah, he did after that our story say on Twitter that he apologised for his tweets, which was the first time he actually said sorry.
Isn't that the case? Isn't that the classic sort of I'm sorry that you feel bad.
I'm sorry that I've been rumbled.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the situation. Yeah, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but this is. I think one of the reasons why this guy is getting so much stick is because if you look at the original Gamasutra post, it was more about Zinger and how his sort of ideals and game making philosophies didn't fit in with that corporate culture than it was about his colleagues at OMG Pop. I mean, in fact, it wasn't anything about his colleagues at OMG Pop. So people were a bit puzzled as to why the CEO would then take that as what looked like a personal attack on him.
Maybe he was drunk.
Tweeting while drunk?
No, it's far-fetched, I admit. To be honest, though, if someone gave me $210 million, I'd get hammered.
The first thing I'd do is get hammered. Yeah. Second thing I'd do is buy the pub I was getting hammered.
I'd be slammed. I'd buy Twitter.
Might need a bit more than that.
Well, I could buy the tea maybe or something like that. So why do people think that Zinger is evil anyway? Why does this guy think
they've been a regular in the headlines lately for various controversies. There was the Tiny Tower one when they launched their own clone, which was very, very similar.
Tiny Tower is an exploitative piece of trash.
Well, I like Tiny Tower, but regardless of whether you like it or not, it's
an
extremely profitable business model, as is Draw Something, and that's obviously very attractive to Zynga. And they tried to buy out Tiny Tower, and then when Tiny Tower's developers refused, up popped this clone. And it's not the first time they've done this.
That's true. So people hate them because they copy games and release them as their own and make money off them.
Yeah, and apparently there are some stories about what it's like to work at Zynga, which don't paint the company in the most positive light. There's a lot of talk about it being basically just a sweatshop for people to churn out clones.
Okay, so we generally agree then with this Shay Pearce guy, and it's nice that he's taken a moral stance. Is that it?
I think it's admirable. I mean, it's probably easier for someone to take a moral stance when your bank account's been swelled by
I didn't realise that.
Money. This guy has got another game that he wants to bring out, and there are some people saying on the flip side that all of this was sort of promotion for
good publicity for
good publicity for his next game.
Isn't there a sort of irony to this whole thing anyway, given that Draw Something is a rip-off variously of Pictionary or indeed Charadium, which I believe is a similar thing that came out.
Isn't everything a rip-off of everything?
Well, this is kind of where I was going with it. It seems a little. I understand that sometimes the stealing is astonishingly obvious. Like the Tiny Tower example, it was barefaced.
The screenshots compared one to the other were just.
It was barefaced to the point of being insulting, but take it like building off the concepts that other people have established over the years. I mean, if we take this to its logical extreme, do we really only want one third-person shooter or one first-person shooter and that sort of thing?
No.
At what point does the idea stop being something that that somebody can own and just become something that everyone should benefit from?
Well, you can't copyright ideas. A genre is a genre, and anyone can do what they want. Like, I think that because we are in the games industry, we are easier and quicker able to spot the differences between games. But if you were to show Street Fighter to someone who doesn't play games a screenshot, and then show another screenshot of, I don't know, another fighting game, another 2D fighting game, anyone, and they would have just go, oh, it's the same game. If you were to show someone a screenshot of Call of Duty who's not in the games industry or isn't a gamer,
and show them
well, I was going to say Battlefield, but yeah, sure, Quake. They probably think it's the same game. There's, if you take, it's easy to go screenshot. This for people who aren't mega into games like we are, and they just think it's the same thing.
Well, that's exactly the problem, because on the surface, I think games like that do often seem the same. That companies can get away with producing clones because people don't, look into it deeper.
It's about the framework of games, though, isn't it? Because I'm sure you, as a fighting game enthusiast, would say there is an astronomical difference between, say, Soul Calibur and Street Fighter.
Oh, absolutely.
But to the average observer, it's basically the same sort of jazz. Whereas, if you were to look at films, for example, like Drive, which is a really good Ryan Gosling film that's done really well lately. If you were to compare that to, say, Taxi Driver, with the Travis Bickle, what's his name, Robert De Niro thing from the 70s or 80s, whenever it was, structurally and indeed in a lot of their themes, and in fact the people who made Drive have said there is a definite through line between the two. One is effectively a tribute to the other, but they're very distinctive films once you get past the raw mechanics and framework of them. So isn't it sort of just that games are far too easy to compare to each other because they tend to start from a very similar structural framework?
Yeah, I think the fact that games have to be games, and there's almost all games in similar genres have to work in a similar way.
Yeah,
means it's these sort of clone accusations are easier.
Yeah,
I do think that though, like Zynga and some of the more recent examples could have made a bit more effort.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Some of them are just really exactly the same.
There's a kind of thought difference, isn't there? It's like if you go into a project and say, we want to make something really creative in this genre we like say you're Call of Duty is not a good example. Let's say that you're the guys making, I don't know, what's an original first-person shooter? This is a terrible. There aren't any. Brink. Okay, so no, that's not a good example. Okay, way back when. Let's
Portal.
say. Well, no, that's actually not a terrible example. Let's say that you're the guys making Portal, and you or whatever it was called when it was a Scholastic thing.
Novacular Drop.
Yeah, Novacular Drop. Thank you for rescuing me. You go, okay, I like the first person perspective, I like puzzle games, I want to do something slightly different, here's my concept, and it's completely different. And yet it looks a bit like, older shooters, Quake, etc., is very brown. But that's different because you've started from a creative perspective, whereas the argument, I think, is that the Zynga, when they start, they go, that's successful, do our version of that.
Yeah. But I think that goes on in the games industry and sort of more traditional AAA things as well. The guys with the money, the suits, the execs, they do go, I want in our portfolio of games our version of that. But then the creators do set out with different way of doing things.
Yes, this is another thing I was going to come on to, which is that sometimes the corporate goal and the creative goal align and everyone just kind of gets on well throughout that. So, for example, the Battlefield series is a creatively driven series. It was initiated with actually quite an original spin. It's not the same as all the other first-person shooters. But corporately, EA needed something to tackle Call of Duty, and they chose Battlefield, and they really rammed it down people's throats in that way. They made this the battle between Battlefield and Call of Duty. Their promotional tagline was going beyond the call, So they created this fiction of this battle between the two franchises, even though the franchise itself was creatively very different. So you had this kind of these people working for good reasons here. Let's ignore the silly single player campaign that shouldn't have happened, and these people who basically just want a Call of Duty killer. So that you've kind of got the best and worst or the best of both worlds.
Where Zynga I think falls down a little bit is that they do, at least look from the outside looking in, just look like they do all of that except the creativity isn't there.
Well, they hire people like Brian Reynolds, didn't they? Apparently with the goal of trying to sort that out, and then when he makes public pronouncements, he starts to sound like his corporate overlords, which is unfortunate.
You see, another thing is that Zynga's obviously a hugely successful company, rolling in it with many staff. There's an opportunity there for them to perhaps dig a little deeper and think about things a little bit more creatively. There's no, I know that their business is based on what they do very well, but when you look at some of the amazing creativity that is in games by people who have no budget and no time and no resources, and then you look at this gargantuan company with swimming in cash, and there's none. It's a bit frustrating.
There was perhaps an opportunity for them to be a bit more creative, but now they're on the stock market and they've got to justify that $1 billion flotation price or whatever.
Yeah,
they've just got to keep those daily.
I suppose it's just the way the world is, guys.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is.
But to sort of move on from that angle onto another aspect of this story, Dan Porter, the chap in question, the CEO who made these comments on Twitter, if he feels that way about what Shay Pierce has said, and he feels like he's got a counter argument, what's a better way to express that?
not get drunk and write on Twitter.
Making a really cool game that everyone likes.
But is
you know,
I
it's
mean,
like it's the proverbial football thing. Do your talking on the pitch, not on Twitter.
Well, that's very succinct, and yeah, we'll move on. Okay, another aspect of this, which I may be a bit devil's advocate, but isn't complaining about evil corporations a bit like complaining about the weather? I mean, if you're like, so isn't it the job?
No, because then no one would do it, and someone has to.
No, sure,
do it.
but isn't it the job of someone like Shea Pierce, who feels disillusioned by the environment he's about to be thrust into, to go in there and try and do something about it? You know, to sow creativity within dark places. I mean, that's how we end up with massive movie studios making really good films. It's the people who learn how to exist within that framework.
So what you say? I think another thing that one of the reasons perhaps that he didn't want to do that was because under the new terms or the contracts, he wouldn't be able to retain control over his new game, which he wanted very much to do, and that was another reason why he turned them down. So he may have thought that would have been an opportunity. Maybe he could have done something, but he didn't want to sacrifice this creation that he'd been working on, this thing that he was making. So we'll never know. I guess in that case, we'll never know.
I think you need people like that to stand up anyway, because, and I think this is one of the reasons why Zynga gets away with a lot of the stuff they do, is because the mobile development scene is still kind of like the Wild West. There's a lot of stuff out there, there's a lot of cowboy developers putting out clones and stuff, and to my knowledge there hasn't really been any kind of there hasn't been any lawsuits that have actually gone through court and there's been a settlement.
Well, it's a very murky area.
This is the problem, like, because it's such a legally grey area, companies can get away with some really shameless stuff, and eventually Apple might pull it down, but that's after hundreds of thousands of copies have been sold. We saw that a couple of months ago with that Pokemon Yellow thing. It was pulled down after people noticed, after Nintendo said to Apple, hey, take this down, but by then they'd made a ton of money. And because that kind of environment can exist, that's part of the problem. So people do need to speak up.
So what we need really, as you say, is people speak up and also better enforcement. Because if the money that the people with the fake Pokemon Yellow game, if that money had actually then been seized effectively and given to Nintendo for whatever, under whatever system exists, then there wouldn't be so much of an issue. And if the little, like there was one recently where there was a guy whose game was stolen from him effectively before he'd even finished it.
That was really sad.
If the money that had made was then given to him and he was given the opportunity to do what he wanted to do and actually develop the game, then that would have been a better outcome. But without sort of firm enforcement of this sort of thing and sort of better redistribution of seized assets and whatever, then it's destined to continue.
I use another football analogy. If refs book players for diving and ban them, they'll stop diving. If Apple starts taking money away from developers who shamelessly clone games, they'll stop shamelessly cloning games.
They should, but the problem is that Apple can't, doesn't really have an interest in that. That's not its role. And as long as it's making money, whether that's from games that people have cloned or games that have been legitimately made and put a lot of love into them, either way, it's making money off the sale of it. And
I think there's
going to be a point in the future where this thing will have to, like it will crack, like it will be like first crust, just cracking. Something will give.
Corporations, even corporations as big as Apple, generally change slightly or change course when they know that the weight of public opinion and the weight of particularly political opinion is starting to turn against them. So, I mean, things like the Foxconn plant sort of controversy.
They've just gone over there and they've,
they're having to take that more and more seriously because there's a massive political and media interest in it now. And so, you're right. The more people who speak up about this thing and the more people who get agitated and up in arms about it, the potentially the better long term. But there will be victims in the near term. Anyway, let's move on from Draw Something. We will conclude that segment by noting that it was Drawsome. Also, we didn't talk at all about drawing penises and sending them to each other, which is a new high for the Eurogamer podcast. Let's move on then, from penises to game. So Game, obviously there's been more drama in the story of Game, the UK specialist high street games retailer. Last Monday it went into administration, which is bad. 277 shops were closed and over 2,000 staff made redundant across the UK and Ireland, which is horrible, absolutely horrible. However, over this weekend, it has been purchased by Op Capita, I believe, which owns Comet, for £1, which is a good deal. Pre-owned. Things are cheaper pre-owned, basically.
It is pre-owned.
Anyway, it is okay to make the joke because 3,100 jobs have been saved and 333 stores will remain open. Obviously, along with spending £1, they also assumed £85 million of debt. So there's something
they got a reward card
to think
with
about.
that as well.
For God's sake. Anyway, this morning, this being Monday morning when we're recording, Martin Gibbs has rejoined the company as CEO. So does this mean Game is now saved and everything is hunky dory?
Well, it does in the short term.
Right.
There are obviously going to be question marks over its future. There are reasons to be positive and there are reasons to be cautious. The reasons to be positive are Game is in the UK is a much leaner business post-administration than it was pre-administration. It now has many fewer stores and many fewer staff. And the reason why Game collapsed, there were a number of reasons, but one of the most pertinent was the fact that it had too many shops in the UK, many of which were very close together. I mean, everyone from any town across the land will probably know the deal where you've got a Game and probably a game station within walking distance, or in some cases 2 games right next door to each other.
Well, the example we use because we're here is Brighton, where they had Game in the shopping centre and then round the corner on the high street another Game and a game station about 10 paces further along.
Exactly, and this was a problem. They were cannibalising each other. One of the big issues that the shop faced going into administration. So one of the first things the administrators, PricewaterhouseCoopers, did was when they looked at the business to try and make it more attractive for a potential buyer was to simply close lots of shops. And along with that came the inevitable or unfortunate news that many people would be laid off. Now, Op Capita, which is an investment firm that specialises in taking on retailers that have been struggling and turning them around. It bought Comet for £2. It's twice the amount it paid for Game.
To be fair, Comet can fly.
Indeed, yeah. But Game can game.
Oh.
Wow.
Exactly.
I thought about how to make this joke funny.
Well, it's a serious business, this. No time for jokes.
Yes, you're right.
So they will hopefully... And Comet's been doing all right, actually, since. So hopefully they can employ a similar strategy. Everyone agrees in the industry that Game needs to change. There are many opinions about how it needs to change, but one that I keep hearing from people in the industry, gamers, just shoppers, is that Game needs to refocus because it kind of lost its focus having the two like game station brands, and it needs to create a more of a experiential shopping experience in its stores. It needs to make it going to its shops a bit like when you go to the Apple store, where a lot of people go to the Apple store and they don't buy anything, but they get like this kind of incredible Apple shopping experience that will then cause them to either be more enthused about the brand or invest in it elsewhere or pick something up online. Game needs to evolve its shops so that they're less like just a place where people can buy a game to a place where people can actually become enthusiastic about gaming.
Well, the thing that's frustrating as a consumer about Game is a mixture of things. One of them is that you can't sample any games at all in most of their stores. Like, you go into the 3 stores they have in Brighton, and it was very rare that you'd be in a position where you could actually try anything before buying it, which is the whole point of games, is that you can play with them. So that's mental. The other things, though, is that it was never really one thing or the other. It was shelves stacked high with product. But if you were looking for something that was out of date a bit, or you were just searching for something, very poor chance of actually locating it. Like I'm looking for a copy of Chrono Trigger on the DS. I went in 3 copies in 3 game stores and HMV or whatever at the weekend. No sign of it.
Well, that's disappointing because as a specialist, surely they're the place where you should be.
This is it. If it wants to be a specialist and it wants to have, and it wants people like me to actually use it, then it needs to have a range of stock that fits my needs. But on the other hand, as a sort of a place for the for new punters and impulse buyers to come in, why would you buy anything from Game? It's always the same crap in the top 5 on its shelves, reams and reams of games you've never heard of that are like pre-owned or whatever. And as I say, no opportunity to try anything.
Well, they also need to. They are more expensive. than everywhere else. So they need to do something about that, either by creating such an incredible shopping experience that people will pay more because they're getting some kind of incredible experience in the shops, or they just go, right, we can't sell games this more expensive and we need to sell them cheaper.
Well, one of the recurrent themes amongst people I talked to during the whole period of uncertainty was they tried to compete on everything but price, but the only thing gamers actually care about is price. And it's all very well saying we've got the best day one DLC, pre-order incentive. We do Game Fest. We've got loyalty cards and so on. People don't care about that. If I can spend £34 on Amazon for something that costs $39.99 in their shop, I'll spend £34 on Amazon.
It does. It is really as simple as that, and I think that is one of the things that they're going to have to address.
Oh yeah, this leads me on to my other question. I mean, it's very nice that they got out of administration and that it's leaner and all the rest of it, but isn't this basically just isn't this a sort of artificial safety net that isn't going to catch them the whole way down? Aren't they sort of basically becoming more and more redundant because they can't compete on price with online retailers, with supermarkets? Isn't the problem always going to be they can't afford to charge less for games and they don't have any digital distribution mechanism, so they're really not a great bet long term at all?
Well, I would like to think that Ob Capita has a grand plan. Hopefully we'll get the opportunity to ask the new UK boss about that. So we'll see, but there are examples of successful high street stores, even in this economy, even in the post-digital world. GameStop in the US is phenomenally successful, and that is a bricks and mortar shop that has managed to do innovative things in the online space and take advantage of this shift to digital, where it's marrying the idea of going into a shop and buying a game with the idea of downloading content.
How much of that is to do with, I appreciate that point, but how much of their success is to do with the size of America as a market compared to, say, the UK?
I agree with you, yeah. But in principle, the theories behind their success should translate over, because games online offering has been pretty crap, from day one. And they were really slow to even engage in it. Yeah. It's not. I'm not talking about rocket science here. There's just basic fundamental things they can do that should help improve the business. And I do think that the fact that they're a much leaner business now will help. If they can do some simple things, then they should be okay, I think.
They really should have had less stores to start off with. It's just a shame that it's come about this way. That it came to a head.
It's funny, when we did an article after that they went to administration, where we looked at why game collapsed and the reasons outlined. Close proximity of stores, aggressive expansion overseas, price, blah blah blah, all this kind of things that the administrators were talking about. And almost everyone who commented on the story was like, could have told you that.
Yeah.
4 years ago, 3 years ago. Don't need administrators to really
it was common knowledge.
It's all obvious.
It almost beg a belief that the people in charge didn't realise this too.
I think they did. It's just they just
if you take over a rival, because they took over Game Station and then suddenly they own every single shop. In a very very short term that might be profitable, but in the long term, that's just uneconomical.
Yeah, I think that there were
uneconomical.
There were also things that they weren't expecting, and you could say that they perhaps should have better expected or reacted to the changes, which were the lack of new hardware introduction, which they were expecting around about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only way to have anticipated that would have been to listen to Microsoft or Sony when every time they opened their mouths they said there wasn't going to be any.
But they didn't really adapt to the fact that there wasn't going to be any new hardware being sold in their shops and excitement around that kind of thing. So they weren't expecting the gaming, the boxed retail to kind of drop the way it has done since a high, which I think was in 2009.
If you look at the whole...
So those two things coming together.
Yeah, if you look at the whole macro picture of the entire games industry, including all of the things which we don't traditionally associate with games industry. So when I say games industry, I mean massive online social companies in particular, things like League of Legends being the biggest video game in the world, and yet never entering into this conversation. When you look at all of the sphere of that money, the market continues to grow, but the proportion of it that's still going into the traditional funnels that we all associate with gaming, i.e. the high street retail shops and the box product, is shrinking as part of that.
Absolutely,
as part of that, and just generally.
Box product has shrunk immeasurably since sort of 2010, and game has not adapted to that whatsoever.
And that's the key. If it had a strategy which allowed it to jump into these other areas in other ways, then it would be a lot healthier, and it could probably cope with even a loss-leading retail presence, on the high street. But it can't, and it didn't. GameStop did. They started getting into online gaming and portals through which you can buy games and stuff. Scale was a huge thing there. Like if you're talking about a country of whatever America is, 250 million or 300, I can't remember, versus a country of 60 million, where especially a country of 60 million that is part of a larger territory that needs to be coordinated with so many different rules and regulations across all those countries. It's very, very, very hard to imagine a small little company in the UK establishing a huge digital distribution presence as a viable platform, whereas it's easier to imagine a company with the heft of GameStop going to the US industry and saying, hey, we're massive and we're doing this, help us out.
It's true. I agree. I take the point. I still think that there's cause for optimism. I think they can continue to exist.
I would agree. I mean, if you go into a game now, then at least they're pushing the gold membership cards, Microsoft Points, PSN store cards and stuff like that. So I think if they get that right, then maybe there's hope. And HMV were in a very similar situation about a year ago. And the music industry is, fairly comparable to the games one.
It's even more further down that digital.
Yeah, I mean, who buys a physical CD single now?
Yeah, and yet I was in HMV on Oxford Street on Saturday, and the whole ground floor seems to be bloody CDs. I was like, get this crap out of my face.
Who goes there for CDs?
I don't know, but they have adapted in a way. I mean, I went to
music industry CEOs who live around the corner.
Employees.
They've upped the sort of tech side of their store now. Half the store is sort of headphones and speakers, stuff that you would want to go into a shop and try on yourself, like which headphones are going to give me the best quality and whatever.
There's a guy trying to flog me a remote control car.
Really?
I was like, I'm here for a DVD.
Well, but at least they're trying, and that is a sort of in-store presence of
like
stuff
every
you get
game should have Connect playable, every game should have Move playable, every game should
and some
have
good stuff.
3DS, Vita.
3DS, so you can actually see the 3D.
Seriously, and some good
Vita.
stuff.
Why, that's just so obvious.
I'm trying to think of some good stuff.
That's nothing.
No.
Is the problem? Maybe the problem we're overlooking here is that all video games are rubbish. No one wants them anymore.
All good video games just require a pad. I think that's the point.
I thought you were going to say a patch, because that's also true.
Maybe they should start selling patches.
No, they already are. Basically, that's what we're.
What DLC?
I don't know if you looked at the comments on our website lately.
There's a feeling that as a patch. Already.
Pay £5 for Mass Effect 3 ending.
Oh,
that's the future, isn't it?
I wouldn't pay £5 for that ending. Not that I've actually got there yet. Anyway, moving on. We've talked a lot about game and about Draw Something. So I guess we've spent a lot of time talking about people behaving idiotically and things going wrong. So continuing that theme. Well, actually not idiotically, but this is a really tough segue now. This is a really tough segue.
Really harsh.
Nothing's going wrong. Anyway, completely a propos of nothing and nothing to do with the previous comments. The next thing we wanted to talk about was our friend Yoshinori Ono at Capcom, who is rather horrible actually. He was taken ill during a Street Fighter X Tekken event. Was it in Japan?
No, I think it was in East Asia.
Okay. So now he's stepped away from Capcom's fighting game business to get better, which obviously we wish him all the best.
Oh, absolutely.
I know you and I have met him, and he's a really lovely guy.
Yeah.
So it was really quite horrifying to see that news come through on Twitter, on websites.
Yeah.
And it puts everything in perspective a little bit, I think. But so anyway, he sort of tweeted, having got back to his feet a little, and just sort of said he's going to refrain from work for his current job for a while. Another person is in charge of the Street Fighter series for a while, and he will support it, but he'll be out of the limelight.
Yeah.
And he says, and this is cause for optimism, I'll think about the new future of fighting games after this. Smiley face. So first of all, why is Yoshi Ono so important to Capcom?
Well, he in pure sort of base terms, you could credit him with not single-handedly, but being one of the chief brains behind the revitalisation of the fighting game genre in 2009, 2008. He worked tirelessly to get the suits at Capcom Japan to invest in a fully fledged Street Fighter sequel, Street Fighter 4. Mm-hmm. He would go on the road talking to journalists, drumming up interest in this, asking for people to talk about it on the internet, on social media, so that he could make a case for the investment in the game. Got the go-ahead, and then did a wonderful job with Street Fighter 4, and now there's a new fighting game every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you could say like Yoshinori Ono was one of the main guys behind that, and so is very much loved by almost everyone who loves fighting games.
Yeah. Have they said who's going to replace him?
No. And this is crucial.
Are there any candidates?
This is crucial. I think there's a few people. There's a guy who worked on Marvel vs. Capcom series, and before that, Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, although it didn't do very well, who may step up to the plate. In many ways, it's kind of like incidental, because the development, the way that Capcom Japan makes its fighting games development-wise, is they have an interesting sort of like very secretive team that nobody really ever sees or meets. And Ono is very much the face of that. He takes all of the sort of press inquiries and media and all that kind of stuff, and is perfectly knowledgeable. But he's not. If you ever play him at a fighting game, and I've played him at Street Fighter and others many times, he's actually rubbish at fighting games, which you would not expect.
Isn't he just letting you win?
No, he's not. He's trying his hardest, bless him.
Wow.
But he's
clearly very good at PR. I mean, he's taken Wesley in.
But he knows...
Wesley thinks he's better than him at fighting games.
I am. But he beat you, but,
How do you know he beat me?
Well, I played him.
Well, I'm pretty sure that he would have let me win as well.
God, he'd have to work pretty hard. So he does all of that kind of stuff. So no one's really massively concerned about the development of these games.
He's
the producer of the Street Fighter series, and
he's what makes them sort of exciting in public.
Yeah, and that is a very, very good way to describe it, because as anyone who's seen any presentation Yoshinori Ono has done or met him in public, he is one of the most enthusiastic, genuinely excitable people. Eccentric, is a good word.
And a lot of people say he's amazingly exciting for a Japanese game developer. He's just amazingly exciting for a game developer.
Yeah.
Like, most people are terrified of saying the wrong thing to the press. He doesn't even... from when I interviewed him, like, his English wasn't brilliant. He had a translator. I think Ben Judd was doing it for him then. But you could tell he didn't want to be translated. He just wanted to talk to you, and it was incredible. Like, he would bounce around in his chair, hands really moving.
That's the thing. Like, Japanese developers tend not to the arm waving thing is not something they do, and they're very sort of like.
It's very hard to break through that barrier of translation, and I think probably even if you speak Japanese and interview in Japanese,
you'd be taken aback. Yeah.
It's well even then I think you'd find with most game developers it's still quite standoffish because it's very formal. But yeah, Ono was one of a kind, really. And
he was very good at talking to Western press, whereas a lot of Japanese developers I still don't think fully understand the
media over there is very different.
The line of questioning that we often have. We're a bit more aggressive, and we are a bit more consumer focused in terms of the things that we feel aren't appropriate and are appropriate, whereas in Japan it's a bit less confrontational. And he completely understood that and was always willing to talk properly and answer questions fully.
I remember you'd ask him which characters were going to be in the game, if he was going to have this, and he'd go, "Oh, I don't know, but we should definitely do that."
Yeah,
and you'd be like, "For goodness sake!"
one of my favourite Yoshinori Ono anecdotes, apart from when I beat him all that times all the phone games, was when he told me about how they were deciding on exclusive characters for the various versions of Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Apparently, the reason why Cole McGrath, the lead character from the Infamous series, is in the PlayStation 3 and PlayStation Vita versions of Street Fighter Cross Tekken is because Sony America brought him over and gave him a tour of Starbucks, and he's this massive coffee buff, and he's like, "Oh my god, what can we do? What can we do?" And they're like, "Well, how about this?" Yes, and there are no Xbox exclusive characters.
Well, who would you have? I mean, apart from the cast of Viva Pinata, can you get him when he's better? Can he do a Viva Pinata fighting game? I will fund it myself. I will set up a Kickstarter. Yeah.
Maybe that's what he's thinking about right now as he's contemplating the future of fighting games from his home, I guess, where he is right now.
Alan Wake versus Viva Pinata versus Master Chief.
Alan Wake's attacks would all involve him sort of picking up a piece of paper and reading a page of his own novel, though.
Well, you think
And
that
shining a
sounds
torch at
absolutely
you?
ridiculous.
No.
But what's his face from Ace Attorney is in Marvel vs. Capcom.
Yeah.
And all he's got is court documents.
But at least he points. Like his pointing gesture can be quite fierce. Anyway, so do you think that this might? I mean, if Onno's out of the picture and he isn't able to drum up enthusiasm, is this potentially really bad for the fighting genre?
No, I think it'll be okay. Yes, it will be harder for Capcom to rely on someone who's so comfortable, enthusiastic about pimping their fighting games and explaining things. But on a base development level, I don't think anything's going to be.
Okay.
The quality of the games will still be the same.
Right. Okay. But in terms of stuff getting greenlit, the pitches and all the rest of it, I mean, isn't there the potential for this just to? Admittedly,
Oh God, I hadn't thought of that, and I hope not. I hope that that. I don't think that will be the case because he went through all of that, getting Street Fighter 4 off the ground, and that was such a huge success, and has spawned successful fighting. Like there would be no new Mortal Kombat without Street Fighter 4.
Oh, that's what we have to blame for that.
Well, and that game was a huge success.
Yeah.
Marvel vs. Capcom 3, while not directly his involvement, I'm sure the powers that be at Capcom were more inclined to make that happen than post Street Fighter 4 than otherwise.
I certainly think as far as Capcom's concerned. They're not the sort of people to look a gift sequel in the mouth. In fact, I believe they've made the same games repeatedly for about 30 years. So now they've seen that it's successful again. Maybe they'll keep that going regardless.
Well,
as a broader question, has the renaissance of fighting games? You sort of partly answered this anyway. Has the success of the Capcom stuff has it given the genre sort of a long tail? Are we seeing more fighting games and really good ones as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So it will about the new Mortal Kombat. It was all right. It wasn't rubbish.
I didn't play it. I played Mortal Kombat 2. That was good. Did all the fatalities in the guide. That's great.
Well, I'd be surprised that's what a lot of people, they just buy it for the fatalities.
That's all I did for MK3.
When is Tekken Cross Street Fighter coming out?
Well, the rumour is that game hasn't even begun production yet, so I wouldn't hold your breath.
Keep talking.
How long can you hold your breath for? 5 years? Since that's how... There we go.
No, I could have kept going, but you made me laugh. Anyway.
Yes, so that... I'm completely derailed.
It's alright, I won. I like it.
Yes,
I let you win.
Okay.
That's the theme.
Street Fighter Cross Tekken is good, despite all the stuff around the DLC. And the there were 3 versions of Street Fighter 4, which you could, but they were all good. Mortal Kombat was okay. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was good.
Soul Calibur 4.
Soul Calibur 5 is okay. The new Tekken will be better, I think. And then we've got Tekken Cross Street Fighter, which who knows.
Cool. The originality is mind blowing. I don't know about you, Tom.
There's all the other things like BlazBlue.
There were other fighting games. There's a new one coming out called Skullgirls, which is a downloadable game. Skullgirls, yeah, which looks pretty hot.
With the girls with boobs.
Yeah, just all girl cast.
That's a shocking revelation.
And all the Arc System Works stuff. There's loads of fighting games right now, and the tournament scene is really vibrant. Like Evo is getting record numbers. More people are watching it online.
Well, it's always really popular at the EG Expo.
Yeah.
Like,
Naruto was number 6 in the charts today.
Fighting game.
It's not really a fighting game.
Not a fighting game?
Nah.
Okay.
No one knows what that is really.
No, that's just a game.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I think all credit to Ono-san. He's he had a lot to do with all of this.
Yeah, and as I say, very, very popular character, and maybe he can be a character in one of his own games.
Maybe. I think
tribute, like a downloadable. Obviously, it would cost like £10 or something. But it's a downloadable tribute.
Without the moves, you need an extra money for the moves.
But yeah, we wish him all the best and hope he gets well soon and all the rest of it. Right, I think that's about enough waffling for 1 week, isn't it? So thank you very much to Tom Phillips.
Thank you.
And Wesley.
You're welcome.
Your incredible fighting game expertise.
He's incredible.
Although, obviously, as we've discussed, you're not as good as Ono. He only let you win. And thank you to me, and thank you to James in the corner. James, wave your hand in front of the camera. Hey, there you go. That was the Eurogamer.net podcast 187. We'll be back next week with even less interesting stuff to talk about. See you then. Say bye.
Bye.
Bye.